ask questions using the chat feature. Peter will pause several times during his presentation to allow chat questions, and Paul will explain in more detail after this introduction. Our club affairs will be discussed after Peter's presentation. If you would like other people or yourself to receive directly through email announcements, you can email to Barry and we'll get you on our list. And we thank you, Peter, for all your time and effort that you put into this presentation. And we also thank Barry Landau, who helped make this presentation possible. I'm going to let everybody read Peter's background, but I'm not going to read it this time. Oops, there. The La Bologna Valley Bromeliad site is a nonprofit organization. The presenters, members, and video producers are not financially for these presentations. Attendance at our Zoom presentations is free to all Bromeliad enthusiasts, and donations can be made to offset our presentation costs using PayPal or going to our website. If you want to take a picture of this with your phone, you'll see how to get in touch the way I just described. Okay, Paul.
All right, so okay, I've again muted everybody. So we discussed how we were going to try to do the question and answers, and we decided to use the chat feature, which for most of us, and I don't know all the different layouts for the different platforms, but I have a PC and mine is at the bottom, roughly in the middle. You'll see that chat, and then during Peter's presentation, you can ask questions. And then we're going to stop, especially if he's on his video walkthrough of his nursery and collection. He's going to go make a couple of stops until he, so he can get ready to go into another room or another area. And at that point, I will open up chat and will read. I will read questions that you have posted on chat, and then there you are. Okay.
He may have to undo himself also.
Yeah, I took you off.
I should be right now, am I right?
There you go.
Yep.
Can you hear me loud and clear? Good. Okay, well, thank you very much. We're underway. Of course, thanks to the La Bologna Bromeliad Society and for the generous invitation to speak. I was going to speak a couple of months ago, but instead I went on a trip. So like in the US, we have very big worries about coronavirus, and the border to the state of Queensland, the next state north of me, was about to close. So my wife and I didn't want to miss our grandchildren's birthdays and most of our children for that matter. So we took off, and that was why I couldn't do the previous meeting. So we spent 10 weeks in Queensland and finally returned, and the border's still closed, so I can't go north, but it's supposed to be going to open soon. Anyway, we live in difficult times, don't we? But at least we can be connected through the internet, which is a wonderful thing. Thank you very much, as I said, to the La Bologna Society and to Barry in particular for all the organisation and stuff, and for being a good buddy for all these years. He already gave a bit of an intro about that. The bio was pretty brief. What I might do is sort of just start the slideshow and talk while I go. So I'll share that screen. I've got a little slideshow on there because we had 90 millimetres of rain here, which is about nearly 4 inches of rain here yesterday afternoon, a series of storms, and today it's clouding over already. So I'm a little concerned that I'm going to lose out. Let's see how we go with this. Is that up now?
Yep.
Okay, so that's just got a small slideshow to start off with before I go for a walk. I've noticed it's clouded over here now, so I've been talking about the weather. Let's hope it doesn't beat me. Okay, so, well, my nursery is called Forest Drive Nursery. I've had that for a long time. Basically, I'm a collector, and I started the nursery for the purpose of trying to help fund my purchasing. So it's kind of like dog chasing its tail. Money comes in, money goes out. I think you read in my bio, I had a very early interest in nature and those sorts of things. I certainly got that from my parents. My father was an artist and a writer, and had a huge interest in science, although he had no formal education or anything like that. He liked writing about space and time, but he also loved nature. And my mother was a farm lady, and the story of how they met and everything else is a whole other ballgame. They're both dead now, unfortunately, but that's where a lot of my interest probably came from my parents. And you know, I used to collect stuff, plants, grow stuff from seed. I also collected rocks and minerals. And at one stage in my life, I was going to become a geologist, but I think I decided that ecosystems look better than mines. That might have been what happened, even though I still have a big love of minerals. How they're extracted worries me. As time went by, I kind of pursued various things. I ended up deciding to go to a place not far from where I live now, probably about 3 hours drive or 2.5 hours drive in the subtropics, where the climate was warmer than Sydney, where I was before, and there was magnificent rainforest areas. It's called the Border Ranges. I went to Lismore to become a school teacher, which I did for a long time. I tried to embody the love of science and the love of nature and all that sort of stuff, natural systems and respect for each other and the planet in all of the students I taught in primary school, not high school. And eventually, while I was in Lismore, I met my lovely wife, Bev, and we're still married to this day. We have 3 children and 2 grandchildren and 1 on the way. So it's busy, life's busy. And I also have an awful lot of other babies, some of them in the picture there. In fact, I don't know how many I've got. I've never tried to count. Too many. I'm overstocked at the moment, but I love them all. We had bromeliads in my garden in Sydney, and I suppose when I started teaching in the western suburbs of Sydney and found nurseries with bromeliads in them, I thought, wow, I love these plants. And the fact that they came from the jungles of South America, the ones I saw anyway, made it even better. For a long, long time, I just sort of collected and you know, did what I could, mainly a lot of family time. But I suppose when I retired, I thought it's time to give this the nursery game a proper go. So I decided to turn my collection into a nursery, proper nursery, hire someone to help and expand it. And it didn't take me long to fill it, unfortunately. I started traveling a lot more too. I did quite a bit of traveling in the 90s until my kids got older and I started the soccer years. Some of you might know about the soccer years because my younger daughter played for the Australian soccer team, the Matildas. So we followed her around the world too. And I used to go to places of interest too, like Renate Ehlers and Eric Goeder's place in Holland and stuff like that during these trips. They were always to Europe. She's now has 2 grandchildren, so I spend a lot of time with them, and they like bromeliads too, all things natural. But my nursery grew out of control, and I'll take you for a walk through it soon. I'll show you a few pictures though for now. I've got, oh, this is where I live. Let's start there. Where the arrow is pointing to 30 degrees south. That's in the subtropics, a little bit cooler than, so a little bit further north where Queensland is. You know, up here, a lot of people who buy and sell plants live along the east coast, very much like the climate of eastern Brazil, very different to the climate of western USA. And it gets cool, but it doesn't get that cold. The further south you go, the colder it gets, but you can grow bromeliads right around the entirety of Australia. And there are even collections out here in central Queensland, places like that, and up here in the Northern Territory. So I go to the next slide, so we get a bit closer. Going down that east coast there are a few towns probably you can read, like Coffs Harbour, just to the north. And then further north is Brisbane, and there I am, 30 degrees south. You notice I'm surrounded by a forest, which is all national park now. And there's the east coast, and we have a warmish current that comes down the coast there too, and moderates our climate. So there's my place, looking from above. So you can see here's my nursery. It's fairly extensive, really, a lot of shade houses. You can see the different greenhouses, and at the moment I'm sitting around about there where the point of the arrow is, underneath that roof out on my back deck. And it's a good spot to look at the bush. This is pretty dense, a lot of rainforest in here, and open eucalypt, well, not so much open, sort of what we call wet sclerophyll forest. It's quite dense, goes in around. It does burn. Last year we got out of jail. So in 1980 we had a wildfire. I didn't live here then, and that would have taken everybody out, I'd say, if we ever had it again. I'll move on to the next one. So here are some views from my back deck, and I'm looking at this right now. Straight out from where I'm looking at these tree ferns, there's a mosquito going past me. I get them too. To the left, you see some of the big gum trees, Eucalyptus grandis, the big tall ones, and Eucalyptus microcorus, tallowood, gum and tallowood, massive trees with sort of an understory of rainforesty stuff, lots of palms. So the climates can be quite wet at times. And to the right-hand side, well, we're looking at the Rainforest Gully. A lot of it I've replanted. Some of this was burnt out in the fire, but not all of it. And it didn't get burnt out in this section. That's why it's still as good as it is. Looking across to the east or to the right, my old glass house is where I'm pointing, and that was built before the house. So I was into things first up. My mum paid for that. God bless her soul. She saw my interest and paid for that. And we didn't even have a house at that stage, but had a glass house. And this tunnel house was built next, and the section behind, which is covered in solar cells too, is what was built a lot later. Move on. Now, I thought I'd better give you a little bit of inspiration from people I knew. Most of my beginning plants were sourced in Sydney or from this lady, Olwen Ferris, who's pictured there, who lived on the Gold Coast, where two of my daughters live now, at a place called Paradise Point, which is now all housing. When she lived there, it was just all sand dunes and coastal heath, we call it. On the left is a lady called Ada Abendroth. She lived in Brazil. She used to send seed to people like these idle ladies, Grace in the middle, Grace Good, and a guy called Bill Morris, who he's still alive. He's over 90 years old now. Lives down in Newcastle way, about 4 hours drive south. And they grew so much stuff, Eastern Brazilian stuff from seed. And that's where a lot of our initial collections came from. They also used to swap plants with people in New Zealand. And they used to wrap them up in tea towels and post them in the mail. So there were no X-ray machines back then or sniffer dogs. And that's how they exchanged plants. I didn't worry about quarantine service. It was back then and still is today a pain in the neck. Some of you might have read some of that. We still have an awful lot of plants in our collections with from these original seed sources grown on by these people and others. And they are becoming a lot of our landscape plants, and a lot of them are misnamed, and it took us many, many years to correctly identify them. Some of the early books, and there are many more other than this, I started purchasing books and 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 also after joining the BSI, that inspired me, the journal, the Bromeliad journal, when I used to see it, Kent's Bromeliad Nursery's catalogue in there and others. And I've got to start importing. And that's what I started doing in the the very early 80s. So here is Grace Good's collection, and she died, unfortunately. It was always easy birthday to remember Grace's, same day as mine. We always had a joke about that. And someone did a cartoon of her there. I can't remember who did that now, but I was told. And there's Grace in her later years. And, she went to the second last Australian Australasian conference on the Gold Coast, where Chester was a keynote speaker, and that was the last one she attended. Here's an old import permit. So I'm rushing through things. I want to get out into the gardens in a sec. You get an idea of the time. 1981 from Kent's Bromeliad Nursery, and it says no more than 6 per variety. And that's exactly what we were restricted to. So we used to you might bring in 20 tectoriums and you'd have, 4 different names. They got a bit suspicious about that and even got a nasty warning letter once telling me that I was trying to cheat the system. I wasn't the only one. That system was changed later. Another view of my garden. Alcantarias so good in our landscape along the east here. The hot weather we've had in the last few years has unfortunately taken a bit of a toll, but we've just had winter. They like winter. They grow well over winter and into this relatively mild spring. And all these ones you're looking at here, they're all Alcantara extensa. They actually are growing from seed, which germinated over these rocks. There used to be ones all over the top of this big rock too, but I removed them so people can jump off the rock into the swimming pool. More gardens on the right. So Alcantarias feature everywhere, as do all sorts of other things like Echinacea blanchetiana, Tillandsia, various Tillandsias there, including Subterias, which grows very well here. So do our tropical palms. As long as they can take it down to about 5 degrees, they can grow here. Bayanas in the garden, all different types, mostly sourced from Germany, and also from Harry Luther at Selby Gardens. But unfortunately, Harry's no longer with us. And they grow so well on trees, especially the Hollandiana types and Canistrum types. I think that's going to be a new genus in the not too distant future. Also, I have a few resident animals. This one was out yesterday. It's a skink. It's really big. It probably weighs a couple of kilos. I call them land mullet here. Scared the daylights out of my wife. She thought it was a black snake when she only saw its tail. Also grow a lot of other plants like Dryanarias and climbing ferns and beautiful Aloxylum flameum, which is an Australian native, and various other things. Few other views. So here's a view from the top of my driveway. Oh boy, it's getting dark. Am I going to run out of luck here? Anyway, entrance to my nursery. It's all pretty shabby. It's covered in a bit like Chester Scope takes place in a sense because he's very humid. I'm quite humid too because I live down in a gully, tell by the tree ferns. So if I move on, a couple of my greenhouses, and there's my Tillandsia house up top. I have to have most of my Tillandsias under cover because it gets very, very wet here sometimes, especially in early winter and autumn. And plants, a lot of the Tillandsias don't like that. My packing area, and that's yesterday, I've got a lot of sales going on at the moment, so it's pretty damn busy. A lot more there today too after I got them out this morning. And a couple of views in a few of the greenhouses now. If I don't get to the outdoor places, this is one of my outdoor areas. Still have a few Alcantarias there, most of which though I've gone out of because people like John Blythe and others in Queensland are doing them by the million, so I don't worry. I still have a few. I do have a lot of tank Tillandsias though, so lovely Tillandsia pamelae on the left, blooming at the moment, and a beautiful form of Tillandsia australis I obtained from Lotte Romannik on the right. That's a massive plant just coming into bloom. Tillandsia fendleri on the left that I collected near Machu Picchu, big form of Krukoffiana from Lotte Romannik on the right. So tank Tillandsias, beautiful form of fendleri I got from Colombia, and Tillandsia samarapatensis from Bolivia that I got from the Germans as well. So another area, I grow a lot of Neo, still a lot of Neoregelia hybridizing. taking over from Chester in Australia, but I'm not the only one doing it now. As anyone on the planets will know, a lot of people are doing this now and growing all sorts of amazing neo-hybrids. My conditions aren't anywhere near as good as further north, and they get my plants and grow them on. I wait for them to flower them and photograph them, and then I'm going to register them. They've got better photos. Some of my Tillandsia are seed raising areas. I grow them on vertical sticks. Some people do them on horizontal things. It's too wet here for that. They just all die. So I grow them on vertical sticks. The big heat wave a couple of years ago wiped out probably 75% of my seedlings. We got up to about 50 degrees in this area. And it was only under 50% show cloth at the time. So it burnt the daylights out of everything. I lost thousands of plants, tens of thousands. A view of my top tunnel house inside, Tillandsias everywhere. And of course, in nature, that's where it all comes from. Remember their origins, preserve your species. And now I'm going to change over. I think we might have to go straight ahead into my walkover because it's really starting to get dark here. And I'll see if I can get some views of the greenhouses in, and we'll leave maybe the chats till the end. What do you think, Paul and Ken?
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah, it's really darkening off here now. Okay.
Okay.
I will leave this and I'll
So
stop.
you want to get out of speaker view.
I'll go and log in with my phone. Okay. I'm in a hurry because it's really is starting to not look so good. Where's my leave? There it is. Every platform has different buttons everywhere. Am I in?
Yeah, you're in. Good job.
Okay. Rightio. I'm just going to reverse my camera. Okay, that's it. So as you can see, the sky has become grey. Can you see me now?
Peter, before you get started, if everybody goes to speaker view, you'll be able to see a lot better than if you're on gallery view.
And he's got to share his screen.
He already has. Don't, Peter, it's all yours. I'm going to mute you. I'm going to mute everybody.
Okay, so I'm ready to go.
Here it is.
Yep.
Okay, I'm just going to go for a walk out. So as I said before, we have a lot of landscaping with bromeliads in Eastern Australia in particular. They do like a little bit of shelter in the middle of the day. Like put them underneath some palms or tree ferns or the like is better. Now I'm going to go into one of my outside areas. I'm just watching this sky because it really is going black. Boy, did this happen in a hurry. So this is one of my outside areas here where I grow everything from Tillandsias. How's the picture quality? Is it okay? Should be good. There's that very, very large Tillandsia australis, which has got foliage like an Alcantaria. It's beautiful blue colour that I got in Germany. I do try and grow some direct Tillandsias outside, such as the Artorums. Some of them do really well. I've got some really nice types there. They're all from Germany. Some of them are very, very big. I have an awful lot of forms of Krukoffiana and stuff like that. But it is getting very dark. I'm just going to walk around a bit. In this area, I used to grow a lot of Alcantaria, but now I tend to grow a lot more Tillandsia, a lot of Bayanas and the like, which I use in hybridizing. I have some walls of Tillandsia out here too. I have double shade cloth in this section as well because it can get very, very hot in summer. Not this year, it's not summer yet though. And on the bottom part, I'll walk around. I'll go a little bit further up. I do this before it rains. I think I'm going to get done soon. Up in this section, you can see extending out a lot of colour. So a lot of my Neregelia hybrids are here, as well as Hohenbergia stuff. Some hybrids using Bayana and some of my Bayana forms. Many of these came from Selby Gardens. Further down, there's a a seedling Alcantaria that is yet to bloom. It's a beautiful media variegate, which is very similar to one called Bruce Dunstan, but it's smaller than that one. Over here, you can see a lot of my Neregelia hybrids. And some beauties coming into flower, so I'll just bring the camera down. So we look for plants like this for breeding. You've got nice conformity, and check the flowers out when they start coming up, and there are some telltale signs as to whether you want to use it for breeding or not. That one should do very, very, very well. There are others over here as well. I won't be doing that much this year because I don't have the space. As you can see, I'm full already. I've got my original stuff down here that I'll just point out. In this corner, I have my Carcharodons, mostly from Chester, and a few other sources, but obviously originally from Chester. And these are what I'm trying to put into my Neregelia breeding program. And that's to make them very sun tolerant, very big teeth, and sometimes there's zonation and banding on them, like these hybrids here. So we have some nice red banded ones. They've actually got Pascaliana in them, these red ones, as opposed to Statex Tiger or the like. There's a Freddie Krueger. We do a lot of Freddie Krueger hybrids, and over in here too. And they tend not to be as good as Freddie itself, although some of the non-variegated ones are. There's that beautiful big Pamela that I mentioned before. So in this area, I've got a bit of everything. This second section down below here has mature Neos, many of them. And I wouldn't have a clue how many there are. And I don't know the parentages of all of them, because sometimes the birds do the pollinating for me. As long as they pollinate a variegated plant, you never know your luck. I've also done a lot of Canistrum hybrids. I see some of them in the picture there, using Vaniolemi and Guaratum and various things like that. Over here, you can see some more very big things. I tend to grow landscape stuff, so I'm not aiming at the apartment market. I'm aiming at the landscape market, and I just love big plants anyway. Some of the Bayana hybrids I've done, just without variegation, are along this one here, trying to get spots and speckles into them. I'll just walk down here. It's probably going to look a bit lousy because I've got to go through the narrow pathway. But I'll give you an idea of some of the focus on some of the nice Neos. So we get some reds, some real dark cherry reds into some of these. This is one I called Hacksaw. And if you look at the spines, you'll see why I called it Hacksaw. I've got some other nice ones coming in this section too, but I'll move on because I think I'm going to get drenched in a minute. You get ones like this that you know, they all need pupping out, a lot of these, because you never know what you're going to get out of them. Probably get elbow out of this one in the end. Lovely big spines, nice colour. And moving on, there are a lot of Tillandsias too I could focus on, but I might focus more on Tillandsias next time we do one Barry, because it's going to be too dark in the Tillandsia house, I think. A lot of spotted ones. I've been trying to do giant spotted hybrids, and I've succeeded with a few. They're not as easy to do as the zonated ones. There's a nice elbow, but these two pups are off the same plant, so you never know what you're going to get when you're doing the breeding. A beautiful red one over here. Should produce something nice, and a spotted one behind it. I don't tend to pollinate between the variegated plants as others do. I like to just keep nice, tough parentage in them and pollinate with many hybrids I've done myself, mainly using Carcharodons and Croetas and those sorts of stuff. So far, I've escaped the rain. There's another nice one, and a spotty one, which only got a bit of a stripe in that. Okay, so this area is mainly for giant Tillandsias, some Alacanthes, and an awful lot of Neos. I've just moved to a different area and have a look at the sky. I'll show you the sky. It's got the look of pretty heavy rain on it, but we might have missed it yet. It might go south. And this is my my general sort of a work area. It's a always a mess. If it's not, if you're not working in it, it's not going to be a mess, is it? And it's cleaned up almost daily, so it becomes a mess very rapidly. And I can hear rain on the roof now of my area. So I have these sticks that I grow my Tillandsia seeds on. You can see a lot of plants behind there too. Another thing I grow and have also found in nature is Ospino variety gruberi. And these are ones grown from seed from Colombia. I found the plant in nature. And without a doubt, I was the first person to ever photograph that. Took 2 days to find it with my driver, Aldo Brando. On previous trips, we couldn't have gone there because that area was dangerous. I know Bruce Dunstan wanted to go into that area, but it was still a no-go when he was there and thinking about it. I'll show you some of these Tillandsia sticks. Is that still there?
Peter, your video is off for some reason. I still hear you though.
Okay.
There you go.
Is it there now?
Yep.
I think I just bumped the screen. Things can happen. I mentioned a little while ago that we had terrible heat a few years ago. These are seedlings of the yellow-violet Giraudii types that you might have seen pictures of that I got from Lotte Romanek. This stick at one stage was covered in them, like it had about 100 or 200. In the heat wave, only about 4 or 5 survived. So that's terrible. I really have lost the light, so I'm sorry about that. We have baby Giraudii there. They're about 18 months old, 2 years old. If we don't, if the weather, like last year was terrible here in Australia, so I dare say it was it's been terrible in California this year, maybe parts of the United States too. If I look at some of the more mature ones, if the light's good enough, so I'm sort of covering a lot of stuff here, so questions can be about anything from Tillandsias to Alcantarias to Neos in time. These are Giraudii about 7 or 8 years old now. Some of them would probably be crossed with the yellow flowering one as well. These are Streptocarpus. Some of these have already started flowering. And these are the big flowered one that I think Pam calls orchid. And the seedlings are all the same. And it self-pollinates. So you can get beautiful, large, giant flowering ones out of that. I do a lot of hybrids in the Tillandsias too, although not as many as a lot of other people, not like Pam, for instance. I did a lot of crosses using Miranthus and what you call Leonomiana or recurvifolia variety subsequentifolia. I'm just starting to get wet here now. So I'm going to have to give this away and maybe go into a greenhouse. The weather is beating us. So you can see all these different seedlings. These are globosus, flowering from seed. They're about 8 years old. So in time, you get a good result. If you have any questions about raising Tillandsias from seed, I'm happy to try and answer to the best of my ability. I'm just going to go for a little walk before it pours and show you that I also grow quite a lot of Tillandsias. I'm going to have to put the tripod down. That's a Tillandsia caliphursus, so it's an absolutely beautiful species. It does well outside here. Because it's an altitude plant, they probably prefer outside than inside. I have an awful lot of plants from Germany and an awful lot from California. So if I move down this aisle, a couple of plants flowered recently. Both of these plants come with the same name, Wellsii, but I'm not sure whether they both are even Wellsii. I have to do some work on that. So taxonomy is another one of my interests, but it takes a lot of time. You've got to pull those flowers apart, go through the keys, look up the type, but so much of that information is now available online. It's wonderful, especially with the help of Derek Butcher. I can't get past them, but there's another beautiful plant there. I have spent a lot of time too trying to make hybrids, variegated hybrids using Nerignelia bahiana, all different forms, and some of them are successful. Just trying to get my tripod to stabilize. Okay, so a couple of different forms of bahiana being used here to make plants like that. And there's a very nice red one. This came out of that hacksaw plant, plus with a nice short stumpy bahiana I got from Herman Prenzler, who some of you will know. Unfortunately, Herman is no longer with us either. You might be able to hear the fan going in my tunnel house here. I have to use fans all the time because my air movement is not good enough. Actually lost the top on this tunnel house about 6 weeks ago, and the plastic's still there, and as a result, I had a huge amount of burn in there. I will go in there in a sec. I hope the internet remains. A lot of Nerigelias down here, a lot of Tillandsias, a lot of Canistrums. A little bit difficult to go down there now, and I might just try and go. It's starting to rain. I'm just going to go into the tunnel house and see if I can keep. I hope I don't lose reception. So this is my tunnel house that I lost the roof on. Some of the plants are still pretty, like these Chantunii, dark Chantunii, pretty burnt. Tillandsia chlorophylla, dried. Tillandsia foliosa, that is. If they had a little bit of shade over them, they're still looking pretty good, like some of this stuff on the side here.
Peter, your audio is breaking up a little bit.
Okay, yep, I can see that I'm going to run out of internet. Okay, I'm getting wet now. I'm going to move back out. Yeah, so show me went an hour earlier, eh? I might go up and see if I can give you a bit of a look at my top Tillandsia house then, given the weather has turned nasty. So Alcantarias are everywhere in my place. There are a lot of them, a lot of very big ones up in other gardens as well, as you can see. Just going to disconnect this fan. That's better. I see how the light goes and the connection goes in here, Paul. How's it looking at the moment? Still good?
It's okay.
Yeah, it should be okay up here. I do have a booster on my internet. We don't actually have any GSM or mobile phone connection here, so I can't go to that. I have to rely on landline internet with a booster to send a C with a wireless booster. So I have shelves of plants racked out very much the way that I remember Paul doing back in the 80s when I first visited him. I've run out of room though. You can probably hear the rain now. Up here on these benches are all plants from Lineochores in Germany, and like this Robin Nick, it's probably a bit hard to see a lot of it. Some very interesting things. The Germans have amazing collections, and if you can go to some of the botanic gardens there if you're ever in Germany, such as Heidelberg or the Parmen Garden. In fact, just about any of them from the east to the west, and also Utrecht's Botanic Garden in the Netherlands, you will see incredible collections of plants, species, of course.
Peter, you're back.
Okay, it's hailing. It's hailing. Oh no. Life wasn't meant to be easy.
Well
I'm
done.
going to go in the house. I've given up with the nursery. The internet stopped.
Okay, so why don't we do this? I don't see many questions in the chat. Oh, wait a minute, I got a couple here.
Okay.
So if you have questions, why don't you just unmute yourself and ask Peter whatever your question is.
Yeah. Listen, sorry about that, Paul. I lost the internet and it came on, went again, came on, and then now it's hailing, so I give up.
Okay.
You had plenty of plants to see. Beautiful.
Well,
plants.
I was just trying to rush through it all, so I'm sorry about that. I could see by the sky that it wasn't looking good. And there's hail everywhere, bouncing everywhere. Okay.
I'd be interested to find out how do you propagate bromeliads and Tillandsias from seed? I never saw it. I've never seen anybody do that.
Okay, I have to turn the volume up because it's very hard to hear now. Yeah. Could you repeat that question, please?
Yeah, I said I've never seen anybody demonstrate how to propagate a bromeliad or a Tillandsia from seed.
Well, I was hoping to have the time to actually do that, but that's gone. That'll have to be a future one. So
Okay.
I had some seed ready to bring out, and I had some neo seed ready to sow. But it's quite easy. But I'm sure on the internet, if you look around, you can find demonstrations of it. But the Tillandsia seed, Varensia seed, like the seed of all those plants in the Tillandsioideae group, it's all a bit like dandelion seed. And, there are ways of doing that. Tillandsias, like the xeric Tillandsias, we tend to have, not grow them on a medium. So you put them on something like shade cloth or a stick or fly screen or something. That's probably the easiest thing. I noticed someone holding up a nice dickia there. I don't actually grow dickias and the like. They don't like my climate. I can't grow everything. I have one dickia, Estevisio. Okay, but in terms of growing from seed, the easiest to grow in terrestrials, Pitcairnias, dickias, that sort of stuff, they'll germinate in just about anything. Varensias and Guzmanias and that are a little bit trickier because they like, you've got to be careful they don't get covered in algae and stuff like that, and they need a regular moisture and maybe good water. Tillandsias are easy if it's raining, but if you let them dry up too much, they'll die. It's quite a complicated thing, really, and over time you get to know more and more about it. But I can't demonstrate. Well, it's raining out there nicely now, but unfortunately I can't show you what I had planned.
Can you talk about your potting media and how it might vary between the Neoregelias and other?
Yeah, sure. Pretty well all of my potting media is made up of Caribbean pine, you call it over there, we call it slash pine over here. So we have great plantations of it. And the bark is stripped off and then it's used for commercial, by commercial gardening people and softball, by councils and whatever else, is softball and whatever. But that's what mine is. It's all composted, so it's been kept moist and treated with dolomite or lime and urea to fix the nitrogen and make sure that it doesn't bleed all the nitrogen out of your potting mix. So it's a composted mix. I add in control release fertilizer, but not too much. But if I'm growing Guzmanias, I add a bit more. I do use liquid fertilizer as well. I use Peter's 20-20-20, which you call it over there. We just call it Peter's Professional over here. And it's really good. I don't have any trouble with it. I use it at the rate of about 800 parts per million. I don't know how that turns out for anything else, but it seems to grow my plants very well. Tillandsias love a bit of fertilizer. I'm sure some of you are familiar with Bruce Dunstan's experiments with fertilizer, and he just advocates the more you fertilize, the bigger they grow, and the bigger the spikes, the more pups you get. Except you've got to be careful not to kill them. And you know, so you have to water frequently to make sure that they're the salt content doesn't build up in their tissues. That's a problem with tank plants, because if you fertilize heavily and you're not rinsing, you can cause damage there, or in hot weather you can get damage too. You want to keep the content in the tanks fairly low, but you can just give a light dose of fertilizer onto the leaves. I once went to Holland and visited Peter Back. I've visited him a number of times now, and I watched the fertilizing procedure over there, and it's fully automated, and you had these great robots that went over the tops of all the different plants with all different mixes. The seedlings were different to the mid-generation, were different to the flowering stock. And the first one put fertilizer on, and I think it was about half an hour later, the second one washed it off. So they didn't want damage on their plants, and that's how it went. They're using ionized water, or deionized water. Okay, anything else on that? Did I get sidetracked on potting mix? Okay, we also used, I mean, look at big plants. I also add in foam, you know, like Coolite foam, whatever it's called, and also add that in the general mix to lighten it up, to add air. And I also add in, particularly with Alcantarias, I'll just add in a normal, like organic potting mix into it. It's quite heavy because they have huge root systems, so they'll send roots out everywhere. Same with some tank Tillandsias, but not all. Some, like Pamela, only send roots out in one direction, and you know, and once they hit something, that's it. They stop growing. Most of you would know about that plant. Okay.
When you're talking about bark,
Yeah, bark.
As
in, yep.
You hear me? I noticed that people that grow on the east coast of the United States, they get pine bark, but we don't get pine bark here in California. I've researched this.
Well, what do your commercial people grow? Their mixes? I
have no idea. I don't know.
Fir bark, orchid bark.
You've got to use something that doesn't break down too fast, don't you? It's got to be something that'll last.
We don't have pine. Ken, what's the it's forest, called forest mulch, but it's not pine, because I've tried to get pine on the West Coast and they don't sell it.
It'll probably break down quicker too if it's a compost. You know, you can use rocks in North Queensland, in the tropics here. They actually just use volcanic rock.
Volcanic.
Makes for a very heavy pot.
Yeah.
Great. That's fine though. Yeah, I mean, where I live, it's not so hot, you know, like it's quite chilly outside now with that hail. But, you know, it's pine bark's fine for me.
I know.
People use, as I said, that pine bark. So if you can find something similar over there, haven't you got radiata pine forest or something like that over there? That
they don't sell anything like in our regular nursery.
Down.
They don't sell anything that has pine in it. I checked because I was trying to order it from back east and it cost so much to ship. I said, forget it. But in Florida, they grow almost everything in pine bark. And that's where they sell pine bark back there.
Might be a reason, you know, it might be a biosecurity thing too. But it's not sent across to the west.
No, it's just availability.
Okay. Well, good luck with that one.
Yeah, I know.
Fir bark is better than pine bark. Okay, Scott. It's probably got a better pH, and there you go. Scott's got Sandals suggesting getting fir bark.
I think that's what we have is fir bark.
Yeah.
That works fine. It's in different sizes.
Yeah.
Medium or large. There was a question from Lynn. Can you fertilize dry Tillandsias or do you need to water them first?
Of course you have to need to water them.
I don't. Look, seriously, I just put the fertilizer onto them.
Right. I know
Yeah,
that
as Scott says, pumice, lava rock. So, yep, that's all used over here too. Depends on what your source is, what's easy to obtain. I don't have lava rock available here, so I don't use it. It's too heavy anyway for me, the number of plants I've got. But anyway, going back to fertilizing, I don't worry about watering them first. I just put it on. But I do water it off if I can within 8 hours.
was that tank near your work area, your fertilizer tank?
That's actually a spray tank. I've got a bit of, I use that, that's a 100-litre tank. Scale insect is on the move at the moment, so I'm in the process of doing some sections. Some plants are very susceptible to scale, and it's not genus related. It just seems to be, species related. Anything to do with Ichthya fasciata can get covered in scale, for one thing. And other plants don't seem to get it much. So I can have them growing side by side, and one will be covered in scale, and the other one's got nothing on it. Doesn't seem to make much sense, but I think scale is everywhere. When I went to Brazil, I discovered straight away in Rio de Janeiro where all of our different scale insects in Australia come from, because every damn bromeliad over there in the city of Rio was covered in scale, from white scale, Ichthya scale, fly speck scale, you name it, and mealybug. So they're all in Australia. They probably came through in the very first white colonists, or not so much colonists, they're all convicts, but the first ships to come to Australia from England with the penal settlement visited Rio de Janeiro, and they brought over everything from Spanish moss to pineapples, and some of the ladies wanted some plants for their garden, so I dare say they bought some nice broms for that too. So that's where all our bugs came from.
What do you use to control scale?
I use, I always combine two of different classes, and I don't use Confidor because of the effect it can have on bees. I use dimethoate, which is still legal over here. It might not be legal over in the United States anymore, I don't know. And another one called Crown, I've forgotten what that's got in it. I've got about 4 of them, and I just rotate around them, and I use them as less often as I possibly can. But you've got to control the scale this time of the year, so I'm having to do some spraying.
Thank you.
With a wetting agent.
Peter, can I ask a question? Can I change the subject? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. We saw that you talked about these very early adopters sending in seed
Yes.
from Brazil. But the fact is that the bulk of interesting plants like Chesters and others, and for collectors like you, there is an extremely high cost and extremely long process to the quarantine system in Australia, such that the cost for you is probably 300 or 400% higher than the cost for anyone else collecting bromeliads. Tell us a little bit about how this has happened and why the quarantine is so strict.
Okay, well, biosecurity has been a bit of an obsession with government over here. I think it started with the Spanish flu epidemic during World War I. So I know that's when the whole quarantine system was set up, and it sort of expanded into plants and animals. Australia isn't as disease-free as the government tries to make out. We have just about everything known to man in the country because of the lack of quarantine for so long before then. I think originally it was thought that the 3 months by ship to get to Australia was enough to wipe out any need for quarantine, back in the early days. The system kept changing, and when I first started importing in the late 70s, it was a difficult process. the chemical of choice to kill your plants as well as the bugs was methyl bromide. So huge losses would be entered into. I can remember bringing plants from Jeff Kent, and having maybe 10% live. And that has continued to this day. Sometimes you're lucky, but I think a lot of it's got to do with the amount of gas that's used and the condition of the plants in the first place, and whether or not they have any moisture in them. But that's one of the battles. So we pay for the privilege. Government quarantine now is very expensive. It used to be cheap back then. Private quarantine now is very expensive too, unless you know someone. My quarantining over the last 10 or 12 years has been through my mate Chris Larson in Melbourne, and we kind of share our plants, and his boss has been pretty amenable to letting us bring stuff in. So a lot of plants were brought in. We had some very good successes and some big losses as well. Nothing guarantees anything. Those plants I bought from Paul Isley that time, Barry, we were lucky with them. I went through quarantine with them, and the guy there happened to come across somebody who was very nice, and he said, "Are any of these sensitive to methyl bromide?" And you know what I said? Yes, they're all sensitive to methyl bromide. So as a result, we were allowed to dip the whole lot, even though probably none of them were on the official dip list. So I hardly lost a thing. And that wasn't the same case with the second lot that came through from Pam, from Jeffrey, and other people that were shipped. Some of them were gassed, and the stuff I brought back from Colombia, some of that was gassed too. So a lot of that stuff was killed. Same from Europe. So tens of thousands of spectacular plants have been lost. The cost is huge. You can pretty well triple the cost of the plant. Let's say it's a wholesale plant, you might have got it for $5 from Tropicflora or somewhere. It's a $15 plant before you blink. Then you got to add in freight and losses, and each individual plant could end up costing more like 5, 6, 7, 10 times the original cost. People need to understand that that's what's happened, and losses can be absolutely enormous if you lose expensive plants, as I know the Camerons did with some of the stuff from David Shinking from Hawaii, those variegated varieties, for instance. The same applies shipping overseas. So I've shipped to the United States on a number of occasions, and I remember one time a whole bunch were going to get gassed in Miami, and we managed to avoid it because they basically reckoned they had bugs or something of some sort in them, and whatever they said didn't even exist in Australia to start off with. They were just lying through their teeth because they couldn't be bothered. They just thought, oh, we'll just gas them as a matter of routine. Ended up not being gassed. So there are quite a lot of nice plants from Australia floating around over in the east there, such as some of those variegated Alcantarias. I think about 6 different types. So they're around over there because I managed to get them out of the gas chamber. But I had to phone Miami to do it and argue with the guys.
Peter,